Hello, welcome back to Erica's Little Welsh Garden. In today's video, I'm going to be planting some onion sets in some seed trays, and I'm going to show you why that can be a really good idea rather than planting them out straight into the ground. If you were to ask me what my favourite vegetable to grow was, onions would be definitely up there on one of my top 3. They are so easy to grow, so versatile, and they're a product that we use in the kitchen pretty much every single day. I absolutely love them. I would usually plant them out in the ground in October time. October is a brilliant time that you can grow and put onions in the ground. They're frost hardy and they will sit there and just kind of start growing a little bit in autumn. They go pretty much dormant over winter, and then as soon as spring comes, they've already got their roots down in the ground and they are ready for lift off, and they get really ahead of the game. I would usually put them in October because that time for me is a time where things are starting to slow down in the garden, and if I can get the onions in the ground in October, that means it's one job that I don't have to worry about at this time of year. But it also means, because they have had a head start growing over winter, it means that they can actually come out of the ground a little bit earlier. Now for me, like I said, I put them out in October time, and I've done that the last few years in a row. And when I was cleaning out in here this morning, I did actually find one of those onions that I did harvest last year, and here it is. You can see that this is an onion that I harvested from my garden back in around July time last year, and it's still perfectly edible. So I'll be taking this down into the kitchen later on. Now, when we buy our vegetables from the supermarket, obviously they may have been harvested at this time last year too, and they go soft quite quickly, don't they? And this is the perfect reason for why we should be growing onions ourselves. When I was down the allotment last, we let out a plot to a new person, and he mentioned that he would be growing lots of things that were really expensive in the shop, and that he wouldn't really worry about onions and carrots and things like that because they were so cheap. And I said, yeah, that is true. They are really cheap to buy from the supermarket. But when you grow them yourself, you know where they've come from, you know how they've been grown, they've not been sprayed with any chemicals. And look, you get to eat your homegrown onions. Now, sorry, I'm being a little bit preachy now, but I absolutely love growing onions. And look, that is one from last year. So anyway, there are 2 ways that you can grow onions. You can grow them from seed and start off with onions like that then need to be potted on and potted out into your garden or your greenhouses in a few, well, probably in about a month's time with these, because they're still pretty fragile. Or you can go for onion sets, and this is an onion set. As you can see, this is an immature onion, and it looks like an onion. You've got the root system down the bottom there, which is the basal plate, and then you've got the top bit there where the onion grows its leaves out of the top. So if you look at one of the onions from last year, it's pretty much exactly the same, but this is a much smaller one and this is a bigger one. So one of the main reasons that I love to grow them from sets rather than seed is because they're already off to a head start. They're a year old already. You can put them in their final growing positions. You don't need to worry about kind of thinning them out or anything like that, and they are ready to go as soon as they're in the ground. However, growing from seed can be a brilliant way as well, because a pack of 400 seeds costs about 50p, and a pack of 50 of these onion sets costs about £2.99. But also, with an onion, they are biannual, and that means that they will flower in their 2nd year. So as these are already a year old, when we put them in the ground, maybe in October or December time, or even January, March time now, they are already set to flower in this next growing season, which means that you can end up, if you're not very careful, you know, if we have a very hot kind of early spring and things like that, it can trigger the onion to send up a really big flower shoot, which looks absolutely beautiful. However, it means the onion then turns woody and can't be stored. So you can have really big crop failures. But with that in mind, I would still definitely recommend going for the onion sets, and especially if you're new to gardening, get yourself a packet of onion sets. You can actually pick them up from kind of really cheap shops, about 99p for 50. However, I would probably suggest going for ones that are a little bit more expensive. Now, you can also get onion sets that are heat treated, and that usually does stop them from sending up that flower shoot so quickly. However, they are again double the price. You're looking about £5 to £6 per 50, and to be honest, you could probably just, you know, grow twice as many of the cheaper ones and get the same kind of results. Now this brings us on to the question of why I am growing onion sets in seed trays at the beginning of March, when I've just told you I love doing it in October and getting them straight out into their final growing positions. And that is because I have got onion sets growing in my polytunnel up in the garden. I've got them growing in my polytunnel at the allotment, and I've got them growing behind you in the greenhouse. But I've not got any growing out in the ground at my allotment, which I would also usually have. But the ones that I've got growing in the greenhouse here are doing pretty well. At this time of year, you can see that already we've got lovely green shoots on these onions, and they are getting ready now just to start growing like crazy as soon as it warms up. But if we head up to my polytunnel, this is the first winter that I've had the polytunnel up in my woodlands, and you know it's been very wet recently. I planted about 50 of my onion sets right at the back of my polytunnel in a mixture of homemade compost and worm castings, and I think there is one onion there. There has been loads of little kind of tunnels and things growing in my, or I've noticed loads of tunnels and things in the polytunnel this year. So whether they all got taken by mice or whether they got taken by slugs and snails and all of the other things that I've got growing in my compost heaps, I don't know, because I cold compost rather than hot, so there's probably quite a lot of wildlife that does live in my compost. Or it could just be that it was too wet and they rotted away, but I'm pretty sure that's not the case. But that's 50 onions and I've got one. I've got them growing down the middle of the polytunnel, which is probably the driest bed in there. They're growing pretty well. They're, you know, just starting to get ready to take off. But then I've also got another bed in my polytunnel where I've really hardly got any at all. And if you have a look on top of that soil, it's covered in kind of moss. And that would show that that bed is, you know, full of nitrogen, but it's also really damp. So whether they've rotted off or they've also been taken by rodents, I'm not sure. Definitely have rodents in my garden, so whether they've taken them or what, I don't know. However, I'm only going to be getting a third of the onion harvest that I should be getting up there. When we have a look at my polytunnel down at the allotment, they're going pretty well as well up there, but I've not really ever fertilised that soil. So that brings us on to the fact that because the polytunnel has been affected so badly this year by, for whatever reason, weather, rodents and things like that, there is a whole area up there that I want to get onions growing in. So because the weather's been so bad at the moment, I can't really actually work out in the garden. I decided to go to the garden centre this morning, pick up some more onion sets and then get them into module seed trays so they can get a head start, ready to go straight out in the ground in the polytunnel in a you know, a couple of weeks when things start to dry out up there. And also I want to get them big enough so they aren't taken by the rodents or whatever other creatures are hanging out in my polytunnel when I'm not there. Before we start getting these planted in the seed trays, I'll quickly talk to you about the varieties I'm going to be growing today. The first one that I picked up this morning is a red onion called Carmen. The reason I went for that is it is a variety that I've never grown before. I've never seen that seed variety available, nor have I ever seen it as an onion set. Red onions are really good in the kitchen, but they're not one that I cook with a lot. So I thought I would just go for this to see how it is. Now, red onions are actually quite notorious for bolting. So you do need to keep an eye on them. And maybe they're one that if you do want to try growing onions from seed, a red one is one of the ones that you try. The next one I've gone for is Red Baron, again a red onion. This one here really is notorious for bolting. I've tried growing it from seed in the past, but I don't think I even had any from there. But I have harvested these successfully from onion sets a couple of years ago, but they were smaller than going for a normal kind of brown onion. So I wouldn't put loads of them in the area. I'd probably put kind of a quarter red onions, 3/4 brown onions. The next one I've gone for is Pink Panther. Pink Panther is just a normal kind of brown onion, but I've never seen this variety sold before, so I thought I'll give that a go this year. And then the next one I've gone for is Stir-On. Stir-On is quite a popular onion to grow from seed or from sets, and it's one of those that you should find grows pretty well. Now we get to the exciting bit where we can actually pick up some compost in our hands, chuck it into a seed tray and get those onion sets planted, ready to start growing. Now in my garden I've got quite a few different ways that I start seeds off. So I've got things like this, which is quite old now actually. This is an individual pot system, but as you can see, that takes up quite a lot of compost and is perfect for bigger things like your courgettes or your squash, or even starting things off like your tomatoes and things like that. But as of yet, it's not full of tomatoes, which it usually is at this time of year. Or you've got things like this, which is a modular seed tray. Not used this one yet, actually, but in the past I've had those really flimsy plastic ones that are about the same size as this one here, which again takes quite a lot of compost if you have a look at that. Or if you don't have anything like that, you can reuse things from the kitchen. These are from grapes, which again, quite a small area, but would take quite a little bit of compost. So what I'm going to be doing today is just using one of these, just a basic seed tray. It'd be really quick for me today to fill that with compost and then put the onions in there. Now what I'm going to be doing is putting 50 in here, which you might think is quite a lot to go in this area. However, with onions, as I showed you a minute ago, these are the roots, okay? But with an onion, you know from cooking with them and stuff, they've got really fibrous roots, okay? Which means that when they all grow like crazy and look like spaghetti junction under the soil, you can actually really easily break them and tease them apart. You could just kind of immerse the whole thing in some water and then gently tease them apart, which means that it's just a really efficient way of getting them started. Because if you were to put 200 onions in here, you know, it's going to take up a lot more space and a lot more compost, and also it takes a lot more time and is way more fiddly. So that's what I'm going to do, get these filled up and plant the onions. So I've got my seed trays ready now to start filling with the compost. What I've done is I've gone for 4 separate types of seed trays, and the reason for that is I can be really lazy. I can get them planted today, and then if I forget which variety is in which, I can then just look back at this video and remember. So that saves me putting on a label. So the compost that I'm using is just a multi-purpose peat-free compost that I've got left over from last year. Onions are pretty hardy and they don't mind too much what you put them in. So I'm pretty happy now that is almost full to the top. So the first ones we're going to be putting in is the Carmen Onion. And you just need to remember that you put it in the basil plate down. And you can usually see which side that is because it's where you've already got some old seeds growing from last year. And then you want to just get them, you know, you don't have to worry about how deep you put them in here. I'm going to go for fairly deep, so you've just got the top of the bulb coming out. Another reason why it's good to start them off in seed trays like this is that if you're going to be putting them straight out into the ground, the birds sometimes pull them up, or if we have frosts and things like that, they can push them out of the ground a bit, and then, you know, if you're not going down the allotment too often, they can come out and not grow, or they can rot quicker and things like that. just putting them in 4 in a row. Hopefully, I don't know, I haven't worked this out. Am I going to actually fit 50 in here? I probably should have checked it first, shouldn't I? But at this stage, we can put them pretty close together, to be honest. Any that are like this, that are really small, I would probably just discard. It's quite soft and probably won't grow very well, so I'll just bin that one. Okay, these are probably a little bit too far apart if I want to get 50 in here. I should have worked it out, shouldn't I, before? Okay, I'm going to have to scrap this and rearrange them a little bit. Back in a minute. Okay, so scrap the neat lines and things like that. I've just gone for putting them in all over the place. But like I said, what is brilliant about this is that onions have really strong fibrous roots, which means it's really hard to damage them or anything like that. So when it comes to these growing, we can then just easily separate them. Their roots will intertwine quite happily, but come apart really easily. So that's the first ones in, and these ones were the Carmen. So the next one I'm going to put in are the Red Baron. So these ones are going much closer together. And that's Red Baron, ready to start growing. And the next ones we've got are Pink Panther. You can see here that this one has already started to grow. So that's what we will hope to expect in about a week or so from all of the onions that we've planted today. Quite a few of these Pink Panther have already started sprouting, so it'd be really exciting to see what they look like in a few days once they've got their feet into the soil. And the last ones we've got are the Styron. And the Styron are done. Some of the compost that I planted the onions in was a little bit dry, so what I've done is I've just put them out on the grass now because we've got showers on and off for the rest of the day, so they can get rained on, and then I'll bring them in, just leave them on top here for, you know, a couple of weeks now until they're ready to go out in the garden. Hopefully I can get the bed ready for them at the allotment, but also I have a raised bed at the allotment which I've put loads of nutrients and seaweed and things like that into, that I've grown onions in the past, but I think I can probably put them back in there as well this year because it's been renewed with loads of new compost. So there you go, that is how and why I am planting the onion sets in spring. However, I just want you to remember that because I've been talking about how the fact that I grow them over winter or in the autumn and I find it much easier, that's just my preference. There are varieties of onions that do really well being planted in the autumn, and there are really good varieties that are planted at this time of year too. So there are thousands of gardeners out there that always start their onion sets off now, but for me it's just one of those things that I don't really do because my lifestyle dictates that I'm just really busy, and if it's a job that I can do, you know, before Christmas, you know, then that's what I do. But please let me know how you grow your onion sets. If you grow them from seed, I would really love to hear any hints and tips that you can give me on how you grow those. Or again, if you've got any hints or tips on how you grow your onion sets too, I would really love to hear it. Thank you so much for watching. If this is the first time you're watching one of my videos, please do hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to be notified of all of my latest videos. As ever, YouTube have some videos up now on the screen that they think you'll like, so please go ahead and watch those, and I'll catch up with you in the next episode. Bye!